My stepsister framed me for causing her allergic reaction, so my 3 brothers locked me in a cramped, airless cellar and chained the door shut. I weakly pounded on the cellar door, begging my brothers to let me out. John, my eldest brother and a business magnate, harshly reprimanded me before leaving. It's bad enough that you always pick on Anna, but cooking seafood knowing she's allergic? Were you trying to kill her? Stay there and think about what you've done. Peter, my second brother and a rising music star, and Raphael, my third brother and a prodigious painter, looked at me with contempt. Someone as cruel as you just keeps making excuses and playing the victim, they said disdainfully. It's better for you to stay there and face the consequences. With that, they carried my trembling half-sister Anna in their arms and rushed her to the hospital. As the oxygen in the basement ran out, each breath became heavier until I finally suffocated to death in that confined space. 3 days later, when my brothers returned from the hospital with Anna, they finally remembered me. But it was too late. I had died from lack of air in that grim basement. When I opened my eyes again, I realized my spirit was floating beside my 3 brothers. They had just returned to the mansion. John and Peter were carefully helping Anna, speaking to her tenderly. Thank goodness we got to the hospital in time. You're recovering so quickly. Raphael was also attending to her with evident concern. The doctor said your body is still weak and you need to eat well. Then, very solicitously, he offered her a large piece of meat. One of the maids timidly intervened. Young masters, Miss Clara hasn't made any noise in the basement for the past 3 days. John scoffed and interrupted her. Today is a joyful day. Anna is back from the hospital. Why bring up that troublemaker? The maid tried to insist, but the cold glares from Peter and Raphael silenced her. That wretch should have known about Anna's seafood allergy and deliberately prepared a meal full of it, Peter said angrily. And to think I believed she would finally accept Anna. But it was all premeditated. Raphael nodded, irritated. Anna, terrified as she was, had to go to the hospital because of her. And yet that woman is still nowhere to be seen. Anna feigned a timid gesture and said in a soft voice, Brother, Clara is being punished because of me. She's been locked in that basement for so many days. What if she comes out furious with me? John's face hardened. Don't worry, Anna. We've been too lenient with her. She's never faced real consequences. After this lesson, she won't bother you anymore. As he spoke, he instinctively checked his phone to look at our message history. The last messages were from 3 days ago. During all that time, I hadn't sent a single text or called. John's eyes gleamed with anger. That ungrateful woman. It's been days, and she hasn't even asked how Anna is doing. Anna squeezed John's hand and said with a trembling voice, I just wanted my sister to spend time with me. I never wanted to take anything from her. John set his phone aside and gently patted Anna's head. You're so noble, Anna. Unlike her. She's just ungrateful. Peter's eyes filled with disdain as he thought of me. That's true. She dared to hurt the family just to seek attention. It's truly despicable. Raphael fervently agreed. Unless she learns her lesson and kneels to apologize to Anna, I'll personally throw her out of this house. In my spectral form, I listened to every word, only able to laugh bitterly at the absurdity of the situation. No one noticed my presence. Since Mom and Dad died when I was young, my 3 brothers had devoted themselves entirely to me. One day, I told them I wanted someone my age to play with. So, they went to an orphanage and adopted Anna as my half-sister. At first, I was happy with Anna's arrival, but whenever we were around my brothers, she made me seem like the bad one. Over time, our bonds broke to the point that, this time, they didn't even hesitate to lock me in that tiny basement. I tried to save myself, but the air grew scarcer. I pounded on the door repeatedly, begging them to let me out. They only looked at me coldly. What are you complaining about? This is your fault. If it weren't for you, Anna wouldn't have suffered such an allergic attack. We spoiled you too much. That's why you keep mistreating her. Stay there and repent for what you've done. With those words, Peter fastened the chains around the door while Raphael stacked heavy objects in front of it, blocking any escape route. Now, watching Anna's fake smile directed at my brothers only made me let out a bitter, sarcastic sigh. Brothers, the sister who loved you the most in this world died by your own hands. Anna tugged at John's sleeve, appearing shy. Brother, please don't be angry. It's my fault for being so weak and having allergies. I'm sure Clara didn't mean any harm. Please, don't blame her so much. John's expression grew even darker, and he spoke harshly. That girl. We spoiled her too much, and that's why she became so arrogant. Peter's eyes glimmered with restrained fury. The older she gets, the more selfish she becomes. If it weren't for her, Anna wouldn't be going through all this. Anna then showed her arms and legs, where faint marks of irritation still lingered on her skin. To the three brothers, those red marks were living proof of my supposed betrayal. Raphael gently ran his hand over the marks. Does it still hurt, Anna? She lowered her gaze, pretending to be on the verge of tears. It doesn't hurt, really. I'm fine. Peter's anger finally overflowed. If we had arrived at the hospital any later, this could have cost you your life. And after all these days, Clara hasn't sent a single message, not even an attempt at an apology. John, filled with rage, declared, "Go get that ungrateful girl. I want her to apologize right here. I want her to prove if she has even the slightest bit of remorse." Peter and Raphael agreed. Yes, she's so confident because we've always protected her. I was there, trapped in my spectral form, watching the unfolding of an injustice so profound that I could barely contain my outrage. They, my brothers, the same ones who had promised to protect me when our parents passed away, were now succumbing to Anna's cruel manipulation, while my death seemed to be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. No one missed me until it was too late, and even then, there wasn't a trace of regret or sorrow from them. Only disdain, only hatred. I watched Anna revel in her fake vulnerability. She wore that victim expression, her moist eyes always bending my brothers to her will. So fragile, so innocent, they thought. But I knew the truth. I knew she had planned it all. From the moment she arrived at our home, Anna never wanted to be my sister. She wanted my place, my love, my family. And now, she had succeeded. Every word that left John, Peter, and Raphael's mouths felt like a dagger piercing my spirit. She was ungrateful. She was selfish. She only caused problems. The echo of those accusations reverberated in my mind, drowning me in a mix of sadness and fury. Did they really believe I was capable of something as vile as hurting Anna on purpose? After everything I had been through, after everything I had done for them, I was the monster, while she used the poison of lies to make herself the perfect victim. I watched them that night, gathered around the table, celebrating Anna's recovery as if nothing had happened. While they laughed and toasted, I felt something different stir inside me. My outrage grew like a wave, something I had never felt before. I was dead. Yes, but I wasn't powerless. Not this time. I began testing the limits of what my new form could do. When Anna got up to get a glass of water, an uncontrollable anger consumed me. The moment she touched the glass, it slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly assumed her usual victim pose. "Must be the fatigue," she murmured, as Raphael helped her. Always so attentive, but that was just the beginning. The following days were marked by small events. Objects disappeared, doors locked themselves, lights flickered. At first, they thought it was all coincidence. But when Peter, distracted, dropped a tray full of food in front of Anna, I saw something rare, a shadow of irritation crossing her face.
Good.
It's working. She began to lose control. She tried to maintain her mask, but small slips revealed who she truly was. One night, when she thought she was alone, I heard her voice. "This house is mine now. I won't let anyone ruin it." Raphael, passing by the hallway, stopped upon hearing her. He entered the room, confused. "What did you say, Anna?" "Nothing," she replied quickly. "I was just thinking out loud." For the first time, I saw doubt in one of their eyes. And I knew it was only the beginning. My actions grew bolder. One night, while John was reviewing documents in the office, I slammed the door shut. He looked up, startled, and I saw my reflection in the mirror behind him. My face, pale and still, was a reminder that I was still there. He quickly turned, but saw nothing. "Must be the wind," he muttered, though his expression betrayed his disbelief. Anna began to sense that something was wrong. She became nervous, paranoid, constantly glancing over her shoulder, even when surrounded by my brothers. And then one night, she made a fatal mistake. During a heated argument with Peter, she let her true self slip. "You've always been so easy to fool. I'm the perfect victim, aren't I? Always defending poor Anna, fragile Anna. While Clara died because of your stupidity." The silence that followed was deafening. John, Peter, and Raphael froze. None of them had expected to hear something like that. At last, Anna's mask had fallen. Peter was the first to react. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, but filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Doubt. Anna tried to backtrack, but it was too late. I didn't mean that. It was a moment of anger. I loved Clara. But they were no longer convinced. Finally, the pieces began to fall into place. The small lies, the manipulations, the glances, the fake smiles. It was all there, right in front of them, and they had been blind the entire time. John rose slowly, his face marked with guilt. "We let her die. And you knew." Anna tried to defend herself, but Raphael interrupted her. "Shut up. You played all of us. Clara died because of us, but you're the one who should have been in that basement." As I watched the scene, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. They finally saw the truth. But it wasn't enough. The pain they caused still lingered within me, alive, and I knew they could never undo what they had done. That night, as Anna futilely tried to explain herself, I saw my brothers step away from her, one by one. John ordered her to leave the house the next day. "There's no place for you here anymore." She tried to cry, to beg, but it didn't work. And I, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, smiled. They had lost me forever, but now they knew who the real culprit was. Let them carry that guilt for the rest of their lives. They finally saw the truth. They saw Anna for what she truly was, the manipulator who had destroyed what little remained of our family. But as I watched them distance themselves from her, I realized something that gnawed at me. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for them to simply know they were wrong. It wasn't enough to just throw Anna out of the house. My brothers, all three of them, had blood on their hands. They were guilty too, and they deserved to pay. Their guilt went beyond letting me die in that basement. They ignored my cries, my pleas. They believed Anna blindly, even when everything pointed to the contrary. Above all, they betrayed me. Since our parents died, they were all I had. I trusted them, and they repaid me with abandonment, cruelty, and indifference. As I watched Anna leave the house that night, crying and pleading one last time, something inside me shifted. There was no sadness left, only anger. It wasn't just Anna who needed to face the consequences of her actions. My brothers did too, and I would make them feel the pain I had felt. The first days after Anna's departure were strange. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. The weight of guilt lingered in the air. I saw John isolating himself in the office, papers strewn across the desk that he didn't even read. Peter spent hours at the piano, playing somber melodies, while Raphael stared at blank canvases, unable to paint. But that wasn't enough. That night, I decided to start with John, the eldest. He had always been the leader, the decision-maker, the one who should have been wiser. He was sitting in his armchair, a bottle of whiskey in hand, when I made the lights flicker. He raised his head, confused, but didn't move. Then, I knocked the papers off his desk, scattering them across the floor. He jumped to his feet. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I didn't answer. Instead, I made his chair spin on its own and slammed the office door shut. He ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. In the silence that followed, I began to whisper, low but loud enough for him to hear. "You left me to die, John." His eyes widened, darting around the room, but he couldn't see me. His breathing quickened. "Clara?" He sounded as though he wanted to convince himself it was just his imagination. I continued, "You heard me scream and ignored it. You locked me in there to die." He began pounding on the door, trying to escape, but I wouldn't let him. The fear in his eyes was palpable, and I fed off it. He needed to feel what I felt. When I finally unlocked the door, he bolted out of the office, pale and muttering that he was losing his mind. With Peter, I took a different approach. He had always been the emotional one, easily swayed by his feelings. He was an easy target. I waited until he was at the piano, lost in one of his melancholic melodies. As he played, I shifted the keys, making dissonant sounds echo through the room. He stopped, confused, and tried again, but the notes came out wrong. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured, staring at the keys. Then, I let an old photograph of the four of us, our parents, him, and me, fall from the top of the shelf. He got up to pick it up and froze when he saw the glass of the frame cracked, directly over my image. "You forgot me, Peter." My voice echoed in the room. He dropped the frame, trembling. "Clara? This isn't real." But it was. And he knew it. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as if trying to block out my words. But I pressed on, making him remember every moment he chose Anna over me. When he ignored my pleas for help, when he placed the chains around that door. He ran out of the room, tears streaming down his face, muttering apologies that could no longer fix anything. Raphael was last. He had always been the coldest, the hardest to reach. But even he had his weaknesses. I waited until he was in the studio, staring at a blank canvas. Using my energy, I painted red streaks across the canvas, forming the words, "You killed me." He stepped back, startled, knocking over the paints onto the floor. He tried to wipe the streaks away, but they wouldn't budge. This can't be happening," he said, his voice shaky. Then, I began moving objects in the studio, knocking over brushes and spilling paint. He shouted, begging for it to stop. But I didn't stop. I wanted him to feel the despair, the helplessness, the guilt I had felt. When I finally left the studio in silence, he collapsed on the floor, staring at the canvas with vacant eyes. Days turned into weeks, and my brothers began to wither. John stopped leaving the office, consumed by his guilt. Peter no longer played music. He just sat, staring into nothingness. Raphael abandoned his paintings, unable to create anything. The house, once full of life, had become a mausoleum of regret and pain. I could have stopped there. I could have let the guilt consume them slowly. But it wasn't enough. They needed to confront their actions. They needed to admit what they had done. One night, I made them all gather in the main hall. Each of them was drawn there by my presence, by an impulse they couldn't ignore. When they were together, I made the lights flicker and spoke, for the first time, with clarity. "You let me die." They looked at one another, terrified, and began to weep. They begged for forgiveness, promised to change, but I knew that would never erase what they had done. They would carry this guilt for the rest of their lives, just as I carried the weight of their betrayal until my last breath. And finally, when I felt my mission was complete, I left the house in silence. Not because I forgave them, but because I knew they would never forgive themselves. That would be their true punishment.